IO Interactive has officially kicked off Hitman 3 Year 2, finally bringing the game to Steam after launching it as an Epic exclusive and promising a roadmap of improvements, features, and gameplay modes that we can all look forward to in the coming months. But to start this wave of exciting content for the game's first anniversary, PC players were given the ability to interact with the world of Assassination like never before with the addition of Hitman VR. And it is a complete disaster, oh my god. I am honestly shocked how poorly implemented the VR functionality is here. I've spent a lot of time in virtual reality. I've played simple titles and complex ones, and never before have I had to constantly fight with a game, struggling to do even the most basic actions. There is no way in hell this was adequately playtested. I would bet money this was shoved out the door so Year 2 could launch with something substantial. It only takes a minute of bumbling around as a supposed master assassin to realize that Hitman VR is half-baked at best and outright broken at worst. Things felt off to me almost instantly. Every other VR game I've played lets you navigate its menus by pointing. It's quick, easy to understand, it just makes sense for the platform. But Hitman doesn't. Instead, you use the thumbsticks and buttons as you normally would, and that feels weird. I know this is nitpicking, but the lack of this universal interaction ends up acting as a sign of things to come. Another bad omen is that in the headset when cutscenes play, they're locked to whatever position your head was last in when they started. Other VR titles would have these scenes play in a set spot or track to where you're looking, but in Hitman, if you decide to stretch your neck as a cutscene starts, you'll be viewing said scene from an angle like this. It's disorienting as hell. Oh, also, within 10 minutes of booting up, I got disconnected from the servers. To be fair, it only happened the one time, but seriously, IO, you need to cut out this always online crap. Once you're actually in the game proper, the first thing you'll notice is the substantial visual downgrade. Hitman 3 is a very pretty game, but you wouldn't know it looking at it in VR. Running on both medium and high settings, everything is blurry, muddy, washed out, and lacking in overall detail. Anything further than 30 feet from you isn't fully rendered. You'll clearly see NPCs just a stone's throw away stuttering along at reduced frame rates, and it's quite distracting. I'll be honest and say my PC doesn't quite meet the recommended specs for Hitman VR, but I can smoothly play Boneworks and Half-Life Alyx with little to no issues, so I'm confident the problem isn't my slightly outdated rig. But hey, some weird interface oversights and less than stellar graphics are minor issues if the gameplay experience is good. These are all the reasons it's not. The default controller layout, which as far as I can tell you can't change, basically maps everything to your right controller. Picking up objects, dragging bodies, context-sensitive actions like changing disguises, reloading, and firing a weapon, all of this is done solely with inputs on the dominant hand, which feels cluttered. It's incredibly common to accidentally do one thing when you're trying to do something else. Being able to grab objects with your left hand would probably help with this problem, but you can't do that because the left grip button is used to sprint. I'll repeat that. The left grip button is used to sprint instead of, gripping stuff. All you can really do with your left controller is open your inventory and activate Instinct, which has been downgraded to be less useful, showing only basic icons instead of full character outlines. An entire limb is essentially made useless, being little more than dead weight you drag along behind you. Shooting just feels terrible. Weapon handling is non-existent. Reloading is a button press that does the same canned animation as usual, so all you can do is point and shoot, which again, you can only do with your right hand. There's no dual wielding, and attempting to use two-handed weapons like rifles and shotguns is a joke. Since you can't physically grip the barrel yourself, the game awkwardly snaps your virtual offhand to it when it's in close proximity. This does nothing to stabilize your aim. In fact, it makes it more stiff and harder to control, but there's no reason to use it anyway since one-handed firing has the same accuracy. Trying to snipe is an unwieldy nightmare. Not only is it awkward to aim, but the scope will jarringly snap to your eye if it's anywhere near it, causing this back and forth battle as you try in vain to stop your gun from repeatedly bashing you in the face. Though no matter what gun you're using, aiming is very shaky and imprecise for reasons I'll go more in depth on in a bit. There are really only 3 substantial interactions that being in first person lets you have with the world around you: punching, throwing, and strangling, and all 3 of these only work some of the time. If you punch someone in the face or smack them over the head with a blunt object, you'd expect them to be instantly KO'd, and yeah, that can happen, but just as often, they'll soar 10 feet in the air only to stand up unharmed, or they'll fold in half and snap back, wondering why this mean man is all up in their space.
Wacky waving inflatable arm flailing tube man! Wacky waving inflatable arm flailing tube man!
Throwing has you aiming at your target with your left hand and physically hurling whatever object you're holding with your right, and a decent percentage of the time, you'll hit your mark. The rest of the time, though, you'll see your weapon of choice go sailing over them or fall awkwardly at your feet. And if you're just trying to casually toss something, like a coin for example, there's no real momentum to your throw. Things feel glued to your hand, with a delay between letting go of the grip button and you actually letting go of whatever you're holding. Looking forward to seeing how it feels to fiberwire someone up close? Well, better hope your trademark tool doesn't phase right through your victim's neck, cause they'll have some questions for you when they turn around. Of course, you could always try using your bare hands. Getting up behind someone and unleashing your inner Homer Simpson is pretty fun to do. It's probably the most entertaining thing you can do. But there's always a chance that your covert strangling will conclude with the victim unexpectedly slamming into the ground, alerting anyone nearby, or this will happen. Yeah, that clip I started the video with isn't some rare occurrence. This happens like half of the time. It's a legit coin flip, though it is pretty hilarious. Because of these never-ending inconsistencies, it quickly became clear to me that any kind of precision was out the window, and the only way to get any enjoyment out of this thing was to screw around and see what happened. All of these problems and more are connected by one fatal strand that compromises this entire playstyle: the tracking. Good tracking is what allows performing actions in VR to feel like an extension of yourself. It makes or breaks an experience. And Hitman has some of the worst I've ever seen. Unreliable doesn't even begin to describe it. The game attempts to do full body simulation, with your head, body, and arms existing in physical space, but they never, for a second, feel connected to one another. They act like magnets with the same polarity, with each piece drifting away to do its own thing, and it takes very little to break them apart. Knock out just one person, or even turn around too fast, and it's almost guaranteed that your head will be separate from your body will be facing the wrong way, and your arms will be contorted in some unnatural position. Man, the Frankenstein's abominations some of these poor people must see running at them. Now, you can, at any time, press in the left thumbstick to reset your orientation, which does put everything back in its proper place, but within a minute or so, something will have broken again. You'll go to sprint forward only to charge randomly in another direction because that's where your body was facing. There's a bubble on your chest that acts as your holster, in theory letting you quickly pull out and put away whatever you last had equipped. But not only is it always jittering around, there's no telling if it'll be there at all because your chest could be out of reach somewhere behind you and to the left. At no point do you actually feel like 47. You feel more like a body snatcher clumsily trying to puppeteer him, and our barcode boy ain't having it. There are plenty of times where you'll see the tracking get lost completely, causing your limbs to tear themselves apart as they cross into another dimension. Whenever you pick something up, you have no way of knowing if you're about to witness a compound fracture light show. I'm positive it's the tracking freaking out causing you to randomly origami your victims sometimes, and since the physics have no idea how to respond to that, it defaults to sending them back to their home planet. I feel like I need to give a flashing lights warning for this next part, so look away from the screen if you need to. but one time the tracking got so out of whack that it put me in the floor, where I was greeted with rapidly flashing pieces of the level that actually gave me a headache, and the only way to escape this hell was to endure this pulsating menu screen. It honestly still makes me ill to play back this footage. You can look back now. Some of you might think this issue is a result of my headset or the lighting in my room, but I assure you it's not. I don't have these issues with other VR titles. It's not my setup, it's the game, and I'm sure anyone else that tried to endure this shit show will back me up on that. There aren't many positives I can point to when talking about Hitman VR, but I always want to try and be fair, so I'll say this much. This update doesn't cost anything. If you already own Hitman 3, then you already have this update, and it works with every single level in the trilogy. So if you're a fan with a headset and don't want to take my word for it, you're not risking anything other than your time and patience to try it yourself. Also, there are moments, few and far between, but moments, where things were stable for just long enough to let me pull off something kinda cool. And for those brief seconds, I could see how a proper built-from-the-ground-up Hitman title for this platform could be neat. And I'd be lying if I said the jank can't be entertaining. Of course I laughed my ass off the first handful of times I shook people to the moon. I even went out of my way to send clips of it to friends. But ultimately, laughing at a broken game doesn't make it any less broken. I do not recommend Hitman VR. I only put in the 8 hours of playtime I did because I was so blown away by how badly this was put together that I had to share my thoughts in video form. And I hope that whatever future content IO has planned pans out far better than this. Share your own thoughts and opinions down below, check out my review of Vanilla Hitman 3 if you haven't already, and thank you so much for watching.